there's the type of person who can act normal, but they can also, in a sense, transcend normal and use their mental faculties or act in ways that are just beyond normal, but in a way that is admirable, productive, and helpful. Like, geniuses do, and, the Martin Luther Kings and the great leaders do. But then there's people who are not normal, but they can't seem to even conform to acting normal when it might be appropriate. And they too seem to be exalted because we're so intrigued by them. And so, but unfortunately, that results in insane people being exalted and given opportunities to be in positions of power and influence. So that's just a comment, a reflection. But the question I want to really dig into with you is the question of like the morally neutral nature of intelligence. So many of these people you talk about, you describe accurately as highly intelligent people, incredibly strategic, interpersonally intelligent, and yet they ended up killing massive numbers of people. So they were morally, bankrupt and just deranged. So I'm curious to hear your reflections on intelligence and morality.
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, they do seem to be completely uncorrelated. I think we can say that. Yeah. So I mean, intelligence is, the way that I would define it. I know there's a whole big fun, issue of debating what intelligence means, but just for today, I would say it's basically a capacity to learn, right? Is the ability to take information in and use it in a practical, kind of way. So it's obviously a good thing. You want it, and again, we can have this kind of argument about what it is, and but I'm not terribly convinced by the argument that it doesn't exist and that we don't need it, sort of thing. So I think it does exist, and you want more than, it's like a lot of things, you generally want it if you have the chance to get it. And it probably does predict a lot of positive outcomes. It's not the only predictor, but it probably predicts, job success and academic success and stuff like that. I seem to remember hearing somewhere that actually predicts longevity. I don't know if that's true or not, but I have heard that. But yeah, I mean, but it's a tool, right? So it's like any other tool, it depends on what you do with it. It's like a car, right? It's useful. You want one probably in the United States at very least, unless you live in New York City or something like that. But you want it. But then there's also the matter of what you do with it. Do you use it responsibly, or not? Do you drink with it? Do you drive 100 miles an hour down the freeway, stuff like that. So what has happened is that in histories you have not everybody who's in the book is necessarily a genius. There are a few folks in there that are not, but certainly in terms of like the people who took control, if you will, whether we're talking about like Alexander the Great or your Hitlers or your Maos, or individuals like that they were clearly intelligent individuals. They could absorb incredible amounts of information. And they used it towards a goal, but is it a goal that we would now recognize in most cases being murderous in most situations? That was a very negative goal. And the shame, of course, is in some of these situations is that their intelligence, allowed them to do a lot more damage than they might have done had they not been so intelligent. I mean, of course, everybody's sort of favorite example is Hitler, that he took, certainly a powerful nation, but one that was struggling in the early 1930s and certainly was militarily not on the level of other countries around it. And despite the fairly numerous shortcomings of 1930s Germany, was able to turn it into, a world-class military, superpower. And made decisions, at least initially in the beginning of World War II, that most people thought were dumb, and he went with these decisions anyway. And actually they turned out to be pretty brilliant, at least for time. And of course, eventually his decision-making fell apart. But, you kind of think of where Germany was in say 1932, and then look at it where it was in, 1940 or so, and it's actually really remarkable what he achieved. Or even 1938. I mean, you look at, he had absorbed Austria and most of Czechoslovakia and without a shot, at that point. If he had stopped then, there's again, it's one of these counterfactuals. If he had had a little bit of wisdom to go along with that intelligence, if he had stopped then, probably people would look at him as remarkable, still maybe immoral, but certainly a remarkable, successful leader who greatly expanded the size of Germany. But of course, the person who took the risks that got him to 1938 was still the person that would keep him taking the risk that would get him to 1945. So you can't separate those two individuals out to say that. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course, being in psychology or academia, you can look around and say, well, academia or intelligence doesn't correlate with morality necessarily. That you can see a lot of people who are very intelligent in our own lives making decisions that are not good faith, that are not based in any kind of ethical or moral decision making. So it certainly is the truth that individuals are not necessarily making moral decisions based upon being intelligent. And of course, there's plenty of lesser intelligent individuals who are completely lovely human beings who make moral decisions, who are ethical and such. So this is not an anti-intelligence screed, by the way. It's a good thing. It's just like any other tool. You have to be careful what you do with it.
Exactly. Aldous Huxley was once asked the question of like, what is indispensable to human life? And his response was, there are two indispensable things in human life: intelligence and goodwill. Intelligence without goodwill is apt to be inhuman, and goodwill without intelligence is impotent. And that's certainly what we see. What we see is that these characters that you describe in your book are not impotent. They're highly potent in their impact on the world, but unfortunately, they're also inhuman. They're inhumane. They do horrible things. So they lacked the goodwill. But and I always hesitate to describe someone as unintelligent. I'm of the mind that if you have a brain, you're intelligent. And I also recognize, of course, that intelligence is not distributed equally among people. But so if a person is a very good person, they have good intentions, they want to do good in the world, but they haven't, let's say, refined their capacity for intelligence, their positive impact will be limited. Right. And that's why I think education is so important, because you can increase the positive impact that you can have by becoming more informed, knowledgeable, and intelligent.